And now that we are done talking about the UFC 304 title fights, we will get into the rest of the card, and it starts none bigger than the baddie. Paddy Pimblett got the biggest win of his entire career and definitely the biggest win of his now 6-fight UFC career as he puts away King Green in less than half of a round via submission, puts him to sleep. Let's talk about that fight and what could be next for the baddie as he enters this next chapter of his UFC career. 29 years old, 22-3 as his record with 16 finishes. Paddy the Baddie Pimblett hasn't lost a fight since September 1st of 2018, coming up on 6 years since he last tasted defeat. 6-0 now in the UFC with 4 finishes and none bigger than a submission in 3 minutes and 22 seconds against King Green, formerly known as Bobby Green, who was number 15 in the lightweight rankings heading into this event. Paddy will now enter the lightweight rankings come Tuesday morning, and it is absolutely deserved at this point. He really needed a performance like this. That was the narrative, and you could tell that Paddy knew that was the narrative in that post-fight interview where he said, "Statement made." Because don't get me wrong, his last win was a huge win. It was against Tony Ferguson, but it just didn't quite hold the weight as a win over Tony Ferguson would have 3 or 4 years ago. Tony, we know the losing streak that he is on as he prepares to face Michael Chiesa this upcoming weekend. Prior to that, he had the weird fight with Jared Gordon, where he arguably got a robbery victory. Jared Gordon should have been the guy getting his hand raised that night. I feel like this win here put all of that to bed. It is a true next chapter, a true turning of the page for Paddy Pimblett because he will now be a ranked lightweight, and he got that big victory over someone who is still very much contending against the top fighters in the top 15 and right around the top 15 in King Green. He looked really good on the feet. He looked polished. He wasn't holding that chin super high and untucked as he had shown in the past when he had eaten big shots. And then he locks in a nasty, nasty submission. Can we appreciate and acknowledge the transition, by the way? Bobby shoots in, Paddy locks in a guillotine, pulls the guard, and the transition from the guillotine to a triangle choke was unbelievable. It was utterly flawless. It happened so quickly that if you blinked, you missed the transition of submissions. And then to transition from the triangle into the armbar, but the armbar didn't even get to be locked in a ton because once it got locked in, the referee realized, oh, King Green is asleep. He is unconscious, and the fight was ended. If he didn't put Bobby Green, now King Green, to sleep, King Green would have had to submit because his arm was going to be snapped with the armbar. The jiu-jitsu is supremely underrated, I feel like. I don't think people realize how good Paddy is on the ground, but he now has 10 submission victories to his name, and he can compete with people on the feet and strike and have power. This was a very much needed victory for the former Cage Warriors champion. And then he follows up a huge victory over King Green with a perfect call out. He called out Renato Moicano, who's currently ranked number 10 in the lightweight rankings. The only problem, Paddy, is that Renato Moicano is already booked to fight. He's going to be taking on the number 12 ranked Benoit Saint Denis in September in Paris. So maybe let's just say Paddy fights the winner of Benoit Saint Denis and Renato Moicano early on in 2025. That kind of hurts me to say we might not see Paddy again for the rest of the year since it's just now August. Maybe we could get him in there in December. We'll see what happens in that fight in September. If someone gets put away quickly, they could make the quick turnaround. Otherwise, maybe he fights someone like Rafael dos Anjos, a former champion, or someone like Jalen Turner. Regardless, he has to work his way up and get a big name next because now that he's entered the rankings, Paddy Pimblett will be in the discussions to enter the top 10 if he keeps winning, the top 5, and if he keeps winning there, title contention. 29 years old, he's about to enter his prime. Paddy Pimblett made the statement. Although the fight wasn't super memorable, I do feel like I have to give a nod to the RoboCop, to Gregory Rodrigues, who is now 16-5. And yeah, he may have beat Christian Leroy Duncan by decision, but don't let it fool you. This man is finished 13 out of his 16 victories. He has won 5 of his last 6 fights in the middleweight division, a division that is not by any means the most stacked weight class in the world. He should be facing a top 15 middleweight next. Let's take a quick look at the back half of the 185-pound rankings. At 15, we have Chris Curtis. We have Anthony Fluffy Hernandez at 14, and Michelle Pereira, who is absolutely surging right now at number 13. Number 12 is Caio Bahayo, and I'll stop there because the next man up is Khamzat Chimaev. We know that he won't be facing Khamzat next. So I would say any of those 4 names from 12 to 15 would be fantastic matchups. One against Chris Curtis would be very fun. 2 guys that like to bang. Anthony Hernandez is a jiu-jitsu ace. Gregory showed off a lot of grappling and wrestling in this fight with 4 takedowns, the most he's ever had in the UFC. I think I maybe like that one the most. Now, off the top of my head, I don't know if Anthony Fluffy Hernandez is booked, so if he is, I apologize. But if he is not booked, give me RoboCop, give me Fluffy. What a dynamic. Arnold Allen got back in the win column. He ends his 2-fight skid. He gets his first victory since October of 2022. He had lost to Max Holloway. He had lost to the undefeated Movsar Evloev. He wasn't going anywhere. The guy's only 30 years old. Yeah, it was 2 fights that he had lost in a row, but you got to think about and look into the competition that he was facing prior. And then outside of this, he beats Giga at Saturday night, beats Calvin Kattar, beats Dan Hooker, beats Sadiq Youssef. He's been in there with a lot of top-ranked guys and gotten victories. So very much needed victory for the number 6 ranked Arnold Allen. What can we expect next? Let's take a look. I haven't really thought about the featherweight rankings in a minute here. Ooh, him and Josh Emmett would be damn fun, wouldn't it? Number 6 versus number 7? No, I think you have to do this next. It's Yair Rodrigues. Arnold Allen, Yair Rodrigues, number 4 versus number 6. That is the fight to make next. We know that now Brian Ortega will be facing Diego Lopez at the Spear at Noche UFC in September. That is what you have to do. Yair Rodrigues, Arnold Allen, book it. And this is where things take an interesting turn because on the prelims, we had Muhammad Mokaev, the number 6 ranked flyweight in the world, taking on Manel Kape, the number 8 ranked flyweight in the world. This fight was wacky. That's the word to describe it because the buildup was absolutely insane. They're getting into fights at the fighter hotel. They're almost fighting at the weigh-ins. They had to be separated, couldn't even face off. They're almost fighting during the introduction of the fight. Bruce Buffer was having to announce and hold people off at the same time. They had 50 security guards in the cage. But then what happens when the fight starts? Virtually nothing. Now, that was a little mean. Obviously, I'm not a fighter. I can't do what these world-class athletes do. But when you have a build-up like these two had, and then to deliver the fight that they had, what are we doing here? But let's be honest, that was the fight that we should have all been expecting in the first place. So we may have got hoodwinked and bamboozled and fooled. But regardless, Muhammad Mokaev did do enough to get the victory and move to a perfect 13-0 at 23 years of age. And I said on Friday coming into this fight, number 1 contender fight. Both guys have been riding a high on win streaks. Manel Kape, a former Ryzen champion. Muhammad Mokaev, undefeated with numerous finishes to his name. The winner of this would be a fresh matchup and a good number 1 contender for Alexandre Pantoja, who has essentially cleared out this division at this point. But instead, it seems like Muhammad Mokaev will not get a title shot and won't even be in the UFC. Dana White said one of the absolute most brutal, coldest lines he has ever said in post-fight press conference history last night. I may butcher it a little, I may not have it word for word, but when asked about Mokaev, and this was the last fight on his contract, will you re-sign him? Will he be re-upped to continue fighting with the UFC? He basically no-sold the question and said,
Well, I think the PFL is going to get a great undefeated guy.
Really?
Good luck to him.
That's cold. And also, PFL doesn't even have a damn flyweight division, Dana White. Come on. That means Muhammad Mokaev can't fight for the PFL, and he can't fight for Bellator because they don't have a men's flyweight division either. So if anything, he's going to have to go to bantamweight, and the PFL doesn't even have a men's bantamweight division, so he'd have to fight for the Bellator bantamweight division, even though they're owned by the PFL. This is a little harsh. He's 23 years old. He has finishes in the UFC. We've seen way more boring or just as, I don't want to say Muhammad Mokaev's boring, though. I don't view him as boring. He just has a very grappling heavy style. But he has gotten finishes in the UFC. Being that he's so young, I feel like he did really have a lot of potential, championship potential, truly. But apparently it's a mixture of his fight style and outside of the cage antics as well that has led the UFC to make this decision. And Dana made it sound like it's not really his call. He said the matchmakers and people behind the scenes weren't even interested in bringing Mokaev back. He pointed out the drama leading into this fight with Manel Kape over the last couple of weeks and months. And I guess even before this, there's been some other behind the scenes drama. Maybe has something to do with the title shot. Because remember, Steve Erceg got the title shot in May against Alexandre Pantoja, even though he was ranked 10th in the world. Him and Mokaev got victories, I believe, on the very same night or in a very close timeline from one another back in, I think, like March is when it was. So did we have something go down behind the scenes where Mokaev was offered it and some drama came about that forced the UFC to go away from him and give it to Erceg? I don't really know. It's all kind of just rumored stuff right now, just stuff to make conversation pieces with. I just want to make it known that I feel like Mokaev should get to stay in the UFC and re-sign. He's so young. He is a very legitimate prospect, but it doesn't seem like that's the route that the UFC is going to take. It looks like Mokaev is going to have to sign elsewhere to continue his MMA career. And for that reason, I just want to make it known that now that this fight and this winner doesn't get the title shot, I think it's going to be Tetsuro Taira that steps in there with Pantoja at the end of the year. And then we have three real big finishes here that we want to finish off the discussion with. We had Modestas Bukauskas get his first submission in, like, I don't know, 8 years or something like that. He had a big victory over Marcin Prachnio. It got wild at times. So as a Modestas Bukauskas bettor, I had to pucker up the butt cheeks a little bit watching this fight. But he did look very good overall, and he's won 3 of his 4 fights since coming back to the UFC after another stint in Cage Warriors. Sam Patterson has gotten 2 first-round submissions after losing his debut fight. He's a Contender Series alum. He submitted Kiefer Crosbie. It only took 2 minutes and 50 seconds. Very long, very rangy fighter out of England for the welterweight division who has close to a 100% finish rate. I believe he's 12-2 now, if I'm not mistaken, with 11 finishes. Sam Patterson, dangerous on the feet, nasty on the ground. Very fun guy to watch for at 170 pounds. And last but not least, we had Mick Parkin get his first victory via finish in the UFC. He improved to 4-0 overall in the company, 10-0 as a professional mixed martial artist, and he knocked out Lukasz Brzeski in 3 minutes and 23 seconds. Now that he's 4-0 in the heavyweight division, teammate of Tom Aspinall, hails from England, has a country behind him. I think he's going to probably, maybe not probably, but I think he should, I'll word it that way, get a ranked opponent next. Time will tell, but you look at the back half there, Romanov, Marcos Rogerio de Lima, and Rodrigo Nascimento. I think you put him in there with any of those 3 guys, and it is a deserved top 15 shot. So be sure to let me know in the comments below all of your thoughts from UFC 304, but more specifically, the main card, Paddy Pimblett, the biggest win of his career. What is next for him? What is next for Arnold Allen and the other big winners on this card? Give me all of your thoughts in the comments below. If you enjoyed this recap, please be sure to drop a like, subscribe to the channel if you are new, because recaps discussing the biggest results from every card go down every single week on this channel, as well as previewing the biggest storylines and discussing what is at stake for every fight card heading in, and my thoughts and opinions on MMA news and fight announcements. You can join the community on social media at the BAJ MMA and follow along on your favorite audio listening platforms such as Spotify and Apple. If you like long form podcast episodes, they release every Friday and Monday. Have a great week, and I will see you all in the next video.